Same positive energy. Available in a 320 ml PET bottle. Rock Boom. Feel the positive energy.
Well, that wraps up Live at 9 tonight and the week. For myself, we wish Samson Kasumba a quick recovery. We hand over to Charles. Charles, what do you have for us today in Frontline?
Well, Sheila, we've been dealing with the question of the standoff between Parliament and the Minister of Education, or the Minister of Education, over what some members have called their summons to Kololo to receive an address on resolving the return of school by children. Let's have the trigger and it will tell us the detail.
NBS Frontline.
I have got a communication from the First Lady, the Minister of Education. She is requesting to have a meeting with the members of Parliament on Wednesday.
It was this invitation that sparked off debate in Parliament, with some questioning the independence of the August House. The legislators were to meet the Minister of Education to discuss the way forward in the education sector after a prolonged closure of schools.
I think in the wisdom of the Minister of Education said this roof for a bigger place that can accommodate all members of Parliament.
If you look at the Parliament today, we don't fit in, and yet this issue concerns the whole nation.
Such voices gave hope that a meeting would happen at Kololo until the plenary session that cast doubt on a meeting where legislators would exchange ideas with the Education Minister.
What's the inhibition from the Honourable Minister climbing down to come and address the House of Parliament within the premises of Parliament?
That a minister can write to you seeking a semi-arrangement of this house.
Those who would like to go will go. Those who would not like to go will not go.
The more you explain, the more we ask, under what rule?
And COVID test was a must for any legislator destined for a meeting at Kololo, only to divide opinion. Those opposed to the move argued that it was wrong for a minister to summon Parliament.
But to have a whole Speaker of Parliament to go to Kololo, please, for our sake, Mr. Speaker, don't go.
Though the meeting has been postponed, this small act raises questions as to whether Parliament is an independent arm of government. But while a number of legislators remain disappointed, patients in public hospitals are equally disappointed. Medics are on strike over pay across the country, citing empty promises.
We are more than ready to resume duty only if the implementation strategy and plan is known to us, and only if 2 or 3 of the pledges are tangibly felt.
In most hospitals, patients continue to wait for medication in vain, and not even a meeting with President Yoweri Museveni has yielded results. But can the government find a lasting solution to ending the medics' strike? The answers to these could be obvious, but finding a lasting solution calls for political will. This is the Frontline.
NBS Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the NBS Frontline. My name is Charles Mwangushampagi. The standoff, others have called it a stalemate, between Parliament and the Minister specifically, the Minister of Education, who also happens to be the First Lady of the Republic of Uganda. Some people prefer to call her Mama Janet Museveni, Kataha, over where they should be, members of Parliament should be addressed on matters regarding the return of children to schools in 2022 January. The latest we have is that the Minister of Education issued a statement saying that interaction had been put off There is debate on whether this was a formal request to brief Parliament or an informal or a hybrid arrangement, as you might have seen some members of Parliament arguing. What does this mean? On questions about the independence of the institution of Parliament from that of the executive and the position of the First Lady, who also happens to be a Minister of Education. One of the other questions is, can any other of the about 73 ministers who sit in cabinet also say, I want to brief members of Parliament, either members of a committee of the House, officially outside of the Parliament building, without that being the proposal of the Speaker or Deputy Speaker? That's what we'll be discussing. And I have a panel here that will also help me discuss this on and off standoff between medics and the government. The strike is still going on. They had a meeting with the president. We understand that there was a meeting between the Ministry of Health this morning and the leaders of the Uganda Medical Workers Association to try and resolve this standoff. It's not yet over. To discuss that, let me start with, I have the State Minister for Health in charge of primary health care, also Member of Parliament for Porto North constituency, the Honorable Margaret Mohanga. Very nice to have you.
Good evening, viewers.
I have with me the Government Chief Whip, the Honorable Thomas Tayebwa. Very nice to have you.
Good evening, Charles and viewers.
You want me to mention your constituents as well?
Mm-hmm.
You should do that for me. I haven't hosted you on this show. I have hosted her a few times, so I need you to send a message to your constituents yourself.
Wow. Don't remind me when someone was on TV, and I think it was on radio. It said, have I been called here to send greetings or to discuss serious matters? But I know very many people in Mitoma, Ruhinda are watching. And so good evening, viewers from Ruhinda North, Mitoma, whom I'm sure.
Otherwise, they're going to punish you for not doing that.
Sure, I know.
Thank you. I also have with me the Honorable Asumani Basalirwa, Bugiri Municipality. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all our viewers.
Also President of the Justice Forum Party, GEM.
But he's not the President General.
Not President General. He's only one.
He's the Secretary General, he's the clerk, he's the Secretary.
It is a lie.
The party is represented in Parliament.
By one person, himself.
Probably he wants to encroach on my people.
I have a governance expert, Munduro Mase Grace, who's a program manager at the Democratic Governance Action Aid Uganda. Very nice to have you, Mase Grace.
I'm very honored to be here, and good evening to the viewers.
And I've been told, I'm learning this evening, that there's one president who is a president general of all the presidents of political parties in this country. And president with a big P. The others are with small P's, eh?
Yeah.
I think that's what.
He usually says Obupi Obutono.
Obupi Obutono.
Obupi Obutono, yeah, P, the big one.
Frontliner. Frontliner. And the only president who's called chairman, Norbert Mao. President General of the Democratic Party. Very nice to have you, sir.
And I continue to represent OO on this show.
OO is getting stuck in China. I'm beginning to wonder why.
You know, China had its sixth plenum of the Communist Party. They had a plenum of the Central Committee where President Xi Jinping has now been ranked alongside the greats, Chairman Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, and now President Xi Jinping, who is the architect of socialism with Chinese characteristics. So probably OO will come and tell us about democracy with Ugandan characteristics. But emphasis is on the sticks.
Great. Let's start with this debate which has been raging in the Parliament of Uganda. And I want to start with you, Government Chief Whip, Honorable Thomas Tayebwa. Is it normal that a minister can decide where to meet Parliament to address it?
It's normal.
Honorable Basman Basalirwa, is it normal that a minister can decide where to meet Parliament, to discuss, to address it?
It is strange and very alien.
Norbert Mao, is it normal that a minister can decide where to meet Parliament and address it on matters important?
It's extraordinary. In other words, it's not the normal way of doing things.
The Honorable Margaret Mahanga, is it normal that a minister can ask to meet Parliament, basically on his or her terms, that you can invite Parliament and tell them where you want to meet them?
Me, I think it was a request. It wasn't meeting on her terms. It was a request. So you decline it or you take it.
Master Grace Mondoro, you're the governance expert. In the structure of our constitution, how does that arrangement fit in? And you've listened to, I have 3 sitting members of Parliament, a former member of Parliament, and president of a party. You are the expert. Is this normal practice?
Of course, I am inclined to agree with the 3, that it is out of the ordinary. And of course, that is part of the reason why it has raised a lot of debate in terms of procedure, but also because this is not an occurrence that we've witnessed very frequently in the past. And so it raises a lot of issues, one around the issue of procedure and rules, but also, on the other hand, you're looking at the circumstances under which this has arisen. Ultimately, I can say for the past now 1 year or so, we have seen or we have witnessed the issue of use of emergency power, possibly because of also the circumstances that we've been in. We're battling a pandemic, so there are so many dynamics and dimensions to how governance, the whole question of governance has been approached.
Who can invoke emergency powers? In our arrangement, who can invoke emergency powers?
Well, in our context now, it ordinarily would be the head of state. In certain circumstances, we have seen him do that. I'll give a very recent example when he addressed the members of parliament on matters of security. And in that instance, he addressed them, and it did not raise as many eyebrows as it has now, especially when the minister also made a request through the speaker that the parliament sit in Kololo. And I think in this instance, the debate has really been around how the rules are structured vis-a-vis, you know, the issues that were supposed to be addressed in this meeting between the minister and the members of parliament, with members of parliament specifically leaning their debate towards, you know, procedurally, is this right? But also citing the issues around, you know, the principle of separation of powers. What would this mean? And most of the debate has also been leaning around the issue of precedence. What kind of precedence does this set? So if you look at this from that angle of what kind of precedence does this set, but also what does this communicate about how our governance infrastructure is working in the moment, then you realize that this debate that has arisen out of this request is very necessary, because it's also a test in terms of where our democracy is moving towards. It's a very huge test for us as a country, and I think it's time for us to also interrogate how our governance infrastructure is looking like. What is the principle of separation looking like in our context, but also in the context of the emergencies that we're dealing with as a state? So if in a situation like the one we're in now, where our democracy either is leaning towards, you know, accepting flexibility and adaptability where it is needed and where it is in a state of emergency, or also questioning the concept of separation of powers, specifically making sure that even if we're dealing with an emergency, are we willing to still respect the rule of law? Are we willing to still be ruled by the law? You know, one of my favorite sayings is that it is more important for the law to rule than a single citizen, because that is why we have the legal framework in place to ensure that each one of us is working within that framework.
Thank you. Mr. Asman Basalirwa, in the trigger that we run, you're shown on TV making a strong case on the floor of Parliament against the invitation. Honorable Mahanga here has called it a request to you to meet members of Parliament and discuss with you, brief you on a matter of national importance. Children have been at home for the last 20 months. Everybody is relearning how to do things, how to go back to normal. What was your major objection? Why did you think this was wrong? Why did you say this is not normal?
Well, I did say it was strange because when the Speaker was reading the letter to us in Parliament and later on giving an explanation, the Speaker did say this would be, actually used the word semi-parliamentary session. Margaret has a problem with the word semi. She says it is semi.
That is an English pronunciation and
yes. So I adopted the pronunciation by the Speaker that day, semi. And on the floor, I was asking the Speaker on how that applies to our rules of procedure. And I specifically quoted Rule 7 and Rule 8 on the general authority of the Speaker. That's Rule 7 of our rules of procedure. And Rule 8, which is to the effect that if something is not specifically provided for in the rules, then the guidance of the Speaker becomes part of the rules until it is captured in the rules through an amendment. So I did ask how a semi-session operates under our rules. And I also did ask whether it is practice common or conventional in the Commonwealth. And I think those were specific concerns that I raised. But you see, there were other three issues that came up during the course of the discussion. Number one, by the way, it's not out of the ordinary that a minister interfaces with the Parliament. But usually it happens at the level of committees. So ministers will come to committees and engage parliamentarians on an issue. The other aspect which is specifically provided for under the rules, which we were advising, is that ministers under our rules are authorized to make presentations, to make statements on the floor of the House. And our advice was that if the Minister for Education had a statement to make, she would have exploited the avenue provided under the rules. And if there were concerns about space and COVID, that Parliament, when COVID struck, our rules were amended. And the issue of social distancing, the issue of virtual attendance became now part of our rules. So we could have actually used the parking lot to erect tents. And by the way, we now have tents. We no longer hire. Parliament now has its own tents. We would have erected the tents and provided an opportunity for every MP to come. Because in the chambers, because of space and the COVID implications, we cannot all attend Parliament. But we allowed a certain number to be in the House and another number to attend virtually. But if you want the entire House to come, because of the significance of an issue, then you can come to the parking and erect the tents. So there was also that aspect, why the minister could not choose to use the avenue provided in the rules and instead adopt a strange or informal kind of interaction. And there were also other concerns about this particular minister. She has been invited to one of the committees 3 times, and she has turned down the invitation. And she has also never appeared in Parliament ever since she was approved by the Appointments Committee. She has never appeared. And some of the colleagues were concerned that, you see, you don't want to come to us. You don't come to Parliament. And then you have a serious issue to communicate, and you want us to come to you. And coming to her on her terms. By the way, we were all required to take COVID tests. And I recall the Honorable Ibrahim Semuju asking the Speaker that, you see, when we are coming to meet you, Right Honorable Speaker, we don't take COVID tests. What makes this meeting so special that we must take COVID tests? So, broadly speaking, those were the concerns. You have the issue of...
Are you suggesting, Honorable Basalirwa, that The major issue, the elephant in the room, is that you're not just dealing with the minister, you're dealing with the wife of the president. Was that playing out between you and your colleagues in your objection to the meeting or the invitation?
Some had that kind of argument, that line of argument. I didn't have it. For me, mine was specifically on the rules. And I was very clear.
You just used the phrase, this particular minister. What does that mean?
Yes, I am saying so. If you got me right, I said some of our colleagues had concerns along those lines. And they were making those arguments. And I was very specific. On the issue of invitations to Parliament and being turned down, it was specifically raised by the chairperson Government Assurances Committee, the Honorable Betty Nambos, and her deputy, Honorable Sewungu. They were really concerned that there had issues with the minister. They had written to her, and 3 times she had turned down the invitation. And you know, the Honorable Semuju was raising the issue of how special this particular minister was that meeting her necessitated taking COVID tests. There were those arguments. Me, particularly, I was concerned about the rules of procedure, and I was also concerned about the precedent that Parliament was taking. And I think when I raised it before the Speaker, unfortunately, there was no immediate response. But for me, I was concerned at the fidelity we must attach to the rules of procedure when we are dealing with Parliament. Because you don't want to set a difficult precedent that tomorrow the government chief whip will invite us to either his home or any of these other places, and you are beginning to ask, why is he inviting us? And then he will ask, but so-and-so invited you and you went, you responded to the invitation. Why don't you respond to mine? Or another person.
Okay.
So for me, and the bigger concern is that if we have rules of procedure that guide how we operate, and I'll tell you, for example, what the leader of opposition said. If it is Parliament, you will make resolutions, you make recommendations that you can follow up and that you can occasionally remind the minister. What would happen in a meeting of that nature? Are we going to have a Hansard? Because the Speaker did commit that he was prepared to attend. Are you going to have a Hansard? Is the minister going to be accountable through the resolutions that are made in that engagement? So those issues, by the way, we are not very clear.
Okay, just one more question to you before I move on to the other members here. There was talk, I think, raised by Honorable Sewungu about the cost of hosting members of Parliament at Kololo. That talk, that discussion has been denied by the government side. They've said there was no cost attached to meeting the minister at Kololo. But Honorable Sewungu quoted a figure of 1 billion shillings for the meeting. Who was supposed to meet the cost of that meeting? Parliament or the ministry?
I don't know who was supposed to meet the cost, but I want to disagree with whoever is saying that that meeting did not have a cost implication. I want to disagree. It definitely had a cost implication. Whatever was going to be in Kololo, either in terms of refreshments or... By the way, we were informed that even chief administrative officers were coming to be part of the meeting. How were they going to bring themselves to that place? So it definitely had a cost. And the Honorable Sewungu was arguing that we are talking about opening schools. But most of these schools are lacking in many basic things. So this money going into preparations and hosting MPs at Kololo would actually be channeled to these schools to prepare them to open. And that was the argument. Unfortunately, the State Minister for Education came and said, no cost. There would be no cost, which I think is not correct. You cannot convince anybody that a meeting of that nature, a meeting of that magnitude, would be cost-free.
Okay.
It's certainly not possible.
Let me come to the Honorable Tayebwa. I'd like you to... You're the government chief whip, and the arguments being raised about the rules of procedure, you said this was normal. What was normal, in your view, around a meeting like that?
See, I'm really surprised that we are still discussing this topic even as a nation. Because to me, this is blowing a storm in a teacup. We don't see anything so big for us to discuss on this matter. Reason being, we invited you for a meeting. If you want to come, come. If you don't want to come, don't come. Because, you see, we are trying to be civil and accommodative in what we are doing. Now, the minister called me, and we discussed this matter. We had an option of calling our caucus, okay? But she said, look, the issues I want us to discuss are issues which all of us should benefit from. And we said, we hope our colleagues can focus on the message, on the issues on the table. Because they've been complaining on the floor, and the minister felt we will need even other leaders who will be participating in the implementation of government programs, in terms of reopening of schools, in terms of what's going on. There are questions of like how the state of schools, how they are currently, those ones who had already paid. Then you have private schools. So she felt, no, I think we could have a situation whereby we can discuss more freely in Parliament to discuss such a matter. My brother here stood up the other day. Before he could speak, I saw people saying information. So I think we have to sit down and also reflect on how we operate when we are in Parliament.
If I may interject, we voted the speaker at Kololo. How come you came that day, you people in the opposition? We had the budget speech there, the State of the Nation address, and they attended. They simply want to get to somebody, not that they really have not attended. How many parliamentary sessions have we attended at Kololo?
The issue is
they are quite a number.
You think the issue is not the meeting, but the person of the
Yes,
first
they
lady.
already told you it's a semi-parliamentary meeting where you'll have to discuss the reopening of schools, which is a salient issue in the country.
Could you explain to me?
How come you went there to vote the speaker?
Because it was
you have been there.
Your colleague is asking you, your chief whip is asking you.
I just wanted to first give you facts, because I was part of the organizing the meeting. So, the rules you are applying, this was not a meeting where we wanted our rules of Parliament to apply. No. It was a meeting where we were calling leaders to be consulted. And then the minister, after consulting and getting all your views, can go prepare a statement which can go to Parliament for debate, formally, and adoption. And what I expected was to arrest fears of the opposition, the leader of opposition to say that if I call a meeting of that nature, Chief Whip, will you and your team come? And I say yes. And people are just hiding behind the scenes, like Honorable Muhanga said. Recently, the chairman of the Education Committee called the meeting, formal meeting, under rules of procedure at Kololo. Okay? The opposition held a press conference saying they cannot attend. That who is this person we are finding at Kololo? Just let me, I don't know why we leave Verai for Verai. This is the first lady. I don't want us to pretend about it. She's above us. In whatever she does.
Is she actually?
Listen, Charles, I want to show you how she's above us. In whatever she does, she is next to the fountain of honor. She can bring him problems. Since when this COVID started, we know the situation we are in. We are seeing how the president has been conducting the business. This is a person closest to her. All security of the president, close protection, are staying with him confined in one place. The First Lady has not been attending public functions. So we agree, even when we were having the election of the Speaker, even when we were having the budget, I didn't see any of my colleagues raising a point of procedure to say how come a minister is seated in a different tent from the rest of the ministers or from the rest of the members, and she's a member of Parliament, ex officio, because we acknowledge her status. Okay? So I don't want us to hide. I don't want us to deny. And I know all this is being done. All this is being done because she's a First Lady and she can make news.
Yes.
And indeed, we are allowing people to achieve this.
Do you think for the question of governance that actually becomes problematic?
Look, Charles,
that you set a precedent.
Charles, there is nothing problematic, reason being a consultation. What's wrong with a consultation? I usually walk to the office of the leader of opposition.
How do you expect Parliament?
Some people find me walking to Basarira's office. They say, how can a chief whip be walking to his office? He walks to my office. So some radicals would say, how come this can happen? But it's a new normal. We consult each other. So if a minister calls you for consultation, and like Wasarira put it, my brother here, Honorable, we have been meeting ministers, even lesser officers, by the way, have been calling us and we meet them. So, but when it reaches to this one,
isn't it problematic in your view that you say a minister appointed serving the government is above others?
She's the first lady.
Because she's the first lady.
Look at the protocol of government. We have a protocol as a government.
How does Parliament then hold such an officer?
It is an international protocol.
How does such a person get held to account?
We hold the
institution of Parliament.
We hold the president accountable. We hold the president accountable because there is a constitution. There are rules.
For the benefit of the viewer.
But make it just very easy. To make it very easy. This was a meeting for consultation.
Okay.
If you wanted to come, you could come. If you didn't want, and by the time she called it off.
Was it initially envisaged as a meeting for consultation, or did it evolve because of the controversy?
No, it was very clear from her letter. She requested members for a meeting at Kololo. She never said, I want Parliament to sit at Kololo. She never said, Speaker, please bring MPs at Kololo. She sent a request as a way of announcing to members, and she was also writing a letter to members to invite them. Okay. Now, what happened in the end, we found there are some issues which we needed to first sort of, in terms of the message, and most of the cows who were coming and all that. But by the time she called it off, and she wasn't even watching you on TV, by the way. Some people think because of pressure. No, she was attending another meeting. So she didn't even know what was going on. So she called me. We are going to have that meeting. We just postponed. It's not that we called it off.
You say we are going to have that meeting.
Yes.
And you said earlier that you're just being civil.
Yes.
So are you going to have that meeting as a caucus, or are you going to have that meeting as Parliament?
No, it will be a meeting for Parliament. Those who would want to come, they will come. Those who wouldn't want to come, they won't come. That's it.
Okay.
Would
the First Lady avail herself to address Parliament as members of the opposition requested or asked on an important matter of reopening of schools?
As and when it is necessary and feasible.
As and when it is necessary and feasible?
Yeah.
Terms and conditions apply? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The Honorable Margaret Mahanga, you say you're defending this arrangement, and you say this is about the person of the First Lady.
I didn't say that. What I want to tell you is these people in the opposition work on double standards. They've been attending so many meetings in Kololo. Why is this one specifically being an issue that should raise dust and cause mayhem, and everybody is so concerned about it? Let me tell you, the cows are not allowed to enter Parliament. So there is no way she could call that meeting, and it is a Parliament meeting, and then they are chief administrative officers. They are not allowed to enter the chambers of Parliament. So if it is a parliamentary sitting, then you can't call the cows. They can't come. So this is a consultative meeting where they should actually have come, and if they really cared about the people they represent, they should have come, listened to the plan of reopening schools. I don't even know which people you represent. Are your people in the sky, or they live here in this country? This is a new normal. Everything has changed. Look at how we are seated here. We are wearing all these things. Did we wear them before? Did we come here like this? So why can't we accept that things have changed and we move on? We have had the State of the Nation address in Kololo. They all came. We had the election of the Speaker in Kololo. We had the budget reading in Kololo. So what is so hard about somebody moving to Kololo for this particular meeting? And for all those meetings, they did the COVID test. I never saw anybody object. But because you want to get to somebody, we are going to set a bad precedent. Everybody else, even other MPs, ministers, will start calling, and they will bring very trivial issues. That even the Honorable Zake will call a meeting in Mitiana and say, all of you members of Parliament come. I mean, who is Zake? Let him call it. And then we shall go there. Because this meeting, nobody is being forced to go there. Nobody is being bullied to go to this meeting. It's optional. You can decline the invitation. You can take it up and go and attend.
Let me ask a question. Honorable Basalu raised this. It came up on the floor of Parliament that the Minister of Education, who's also the First Lady, has been invited multiple times by a committee of Parliament, and she has snubbed those invitations.
She has not snubbed the invitations. She has not yet got the time to attend. And I can assure you that she will attend that meeting. But she will not attend where people want to get to her. She will attend where she will have a good discourse with the members of Parliament.
Honorable Margaret, just to supplement what you're saying, you invite a Minister of Education. In that ministry, we have 4 ministers. Okay? And ministers deploy the way they want. So the one who has been coming, Muyingo came, Obua came,
Dr. Kaduchu was there.
Dr. Kaduchu came. But someone, it seems someone is interested in the face of Mama Janet. You know, people have issues. There is someone who said, even call her Mama. People even have pain that I took up a choice of calling someone Mama. You see someone swallowing a Panadol over that. That you call her Mama. And someone develops a headache, swallows a Panadol because I've called someone Mama. So one of them I said, okay, I've also called you Aunt. I hope this, it balances it off. But even she went back with a headache. So for us, we are very clear how we work as a government. If you think you're going to be inviting a minister, and a specific minister must be the one to come when it's not matters of personal statements, okay? Then you're mistaken.
Okay.
Ministers work together, and we shall be deploying whoever we want to deploy.
Let me get some help from the frontliner, Chairman Mao. You hear this controversy. I'd like you to weigh in. What exactly are we dealing with? Some people have called it bullying, that Minister of Education, Janet Kataha Museveni, is bullying Parliament and saying, come and meet me when you want. I will come to you when I have the time. If I don't have the time, I will not come. Like the postponement, I had the statement from the spokesperson of the ministry. Other engagements that had been pre-planned came up. So we'll not be able to attend this meeting. What exactly are we dealing with as a country? And Honorable Taiwa says we shouldn't even be discussing this. It's not an important issue. Is it actually an important issue?
The Frontline is a very respected platform, and when we choose to discuss an issue, it means the issue is causing agitation. And the Parliament is also an important forum. So if Parliament can discuss it, surely why can't the Frontline discuss it? I was enjoying the discussion by the 3 members of Parliament. They are the ones who speak for us in that house. The rest of us are ordinary people because we don't have that platform of speaking in a privileged forum. I said earlier that it is unusual to have the entire Parliament go to meet outside their premises. But that doesn't mean it cannot happen. It can happen. We have been thinking that this was supposed to be a sitting of Parliament. We are now being told it is not supposed to be a sitting of Parliament. If it were to be a sitting of Parliament, then I think it would be up to the Speaker to make it a sitting similar to the sitting in which the State of the Nation address was delivered, and also similar to the sitting in which the Speaker and Deputy were elected. In that case, the Speaker using the vested authority of that office would schedule a meeting at any venue, even Kacheka Stadium, even Kaunda Ground in Gulu, even in
Kanyanda,
that stadium of Bujiri, the football field, Indocha. Yes, Indocha. And then while there, the Speaker would issue a proclamation declaring that that place is Parliament. And then the issue would be tabled and discussed as a Parliament. If the First Lady wants to meet local government, we have the Uganda Local Government Association, ULGA. I was one of the top officials of Uganda Local Government Association. In that meeting, you would have all the LC5s and all the cows. And that would be a very important engagement because from my experience, the majority of members of Parliament are not people of detail. They deal with these issues on the surface, and most of it are for purposes of headline grabbing on radios and TVs, and it is only a handful of members of Parliament who really dig their teeth deep into some of these very important issues. Therefore, the minister needed to get proper advice. But the fact that the discussion has gone away from the subject matter, namely the fact that our children have been out of school, namely that anthills are growing in classrooms, teachers have become the most disrespected people in the villages, school compounds have become hunting grounds. This issue is very important, but now the subject has become the First Lady, who is also the Minister of Education. The issue has degenerated into what you would say contest of egos. But that should be viewed as a symptom of how toxic our politics has become. The politics of Uganda has become so toxic to the extent that opposing now means opposing a person rather than opposing their ideas and policies. I think it is okay to oppose policies, but the moment we go into clashes of personalities, then the politics becomes too toxic. Because at that point, even when you go to war, it is not that you actually have a personal hatred for the person you are shooting at, but you are shooting at them because you are militantly opposed to the ideas they represent and stand for. So, as a result of that, we are now discussing the venue of a meeting as opposed to the agenda. I am learning for the first time that the First Lady, since being sworn in as minister, has not appeared in Parliament. What I know is that she's not the only one. The other day, but because of who she is, her name grabs attention. We had here the Honorable Kahindo Tafire, who was clashing with another MP right here on the front line, and the MP was telling him, why are you not in Parliament? You should be in Parliament to answer questions. And he told him that my Minister of State is there to represent the ministry. The concerns about COVID-19 and the rules that we call the new normal are okay. Those are things that we have got to deal with. If there was goodwill on both sides, if there was less toxicity in our politics, the members of Parliament would not be so agitated. I also think if the announcement was made that the Minister of Education, who is also the First Lady, is going to be making a policy statement at Kololo airstrip on such and such a day, and the following have been attended, And you members of parliament are also welcome to attend, full stop. Then the statement by the government chief whip would be persuasive. But it looks like there has been a climb down. Because the word that started this spark was that the Minister of Education has summoned members of parliament. So we definitely have a communication problem. If I want to meet people, members of parliament, it doesn't matter who I am. If the Honorable Basalirwa is having an event and says there is this event and members of parliament are welcome. I have heard the speaker announcing celebrations, Thanksgiving by members of parliament, and the members of parliament are told, I've not heard any member of parliament saying, who does this one think he is? Why should I burn my fuel to come to pray when God is everywhere? Even funerals have been announced from the speaker's chair, but because the politics has become so acidic, and when you talk about the First Lady is the spouse of the President. The President is a major target of attacks, and so the stones may not be aimed for the First Lady, but she will have to absorb them because they are intended for the President. But I think there's need for good communication. But if I'm a minister and I want to address a policy issue from Kololo airstrip, and I ask the speaker to make the announcement, I may not even ask the speaker. The MPs have pigeonholes, there are WhatsApp groups. Those who come will come, those who won't come will not come. Then that would be very honest. But I think there was an assumption from the office of the Minister of Education that the MPs would take it for granted that, you know, there is this invitation and they should comply. I'm seeing NBS, they are running their comments that the speaker had already bowed to. I always wonder.
That's what is unfortunate.
It has been running here. I do not know where they get that from, because the invitation was not for the speaker.
Well, maybe because the speaker said he would personally attend and asked his colleagues to join him. And he said, don't look at the form, look at the substance of what is supposed to be communicated. Maybe that's where it was coming from. But ladies and gentlemen,
the other issue of which is raised by the Minister of Primary
could you pick that up after a very short break?
Is also okay, because you have a president who is over 77 years old, and if your spouse is going to be mixing with people whose COVID status you are not sure of, the risk is very high. That is a legitimate concern from a medical point of view. That is the endangered age group. So I have seen him in meetings, some of which I have attended, where he is miles away. So you definitely want to minimize that. Okay. But for me, my main issue is that the politics of Uganda has become so toxic that I now pity Ugandans, because we have forgotten them. We are on each other's throat instead.
We need to take a quick commercial break, and when we come out, do you think, and I put this to the panel, do you think there is validity that people have raised before? Yes, if you know that you're likely to land in these problems, must you appoint a person like the First Lady into cabinet? Would you create a separation there? Where do you draw the line between the executive and parliament as a legislature, the separation of powers? Some of those concerns have been raised. But I can see a few people are watching the show. I mean, many people are watching the show, and a few of them are sending messages. I've seen someone called Aboch Kato Nyansio. He's watching us all the way from Kabende in your former constituency, in Russia Kabarole district. He's watching. I have seen a question here from Andrew Mujenzi. He says, kindly inform the country that we are not in normal situations. The president has addressed similar meetings at Kololo because of the COVID situation. What's wrong with the First Lady, who stays in the same household, doing the same in the circumstances? That from someone called Andrew Mujenzi. Another viewer here says, another viewer says, Parliament has enough space to host. Honorable Janet is calling, and she also knows that. I think they are proving to us now that Parliament has no much power. They call when they want. And this is a message someone is sending greetings to you, Honorable Margaret Muhanga. I don't have the name here, but I'll find it at some stage. Another, yes, says greetings to you. Someone called Igumera Rwamasindi says, it's sad that a group of MPs decided to focus on the venue and the person who called for the meeting. It would be prudent enough if they had focused on the agenda of the meeting, of which we know the agenda was to discuss the fate of our students in Uganda who are our future assets. And above all, it's Mama Janet K. Museveni entitled to doing isn't she entitled to doing her official duties, whichever way she does those official duties. And the last message I will take for now is, Honorable Basalirwa, you can quote the entire Constitution. You can even pretend, but the current Minister of Education is not an ordinary minister. Her treatment in Parliament is not very different from the treatment Parliament accords the President, given the COVID-19 situation prevailing. That is from Nteje Asimwe. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion. Right back.
NBS Frontline.